A piercing December gust swept across the plaza, clawing at the tattered service coat of an elderly man standing before the National Valor Sanctuary. "This isn't your place, old man," the gatekeeper sneered, his voice heavy with disdain. "Only true warriors belong here." Onlookers turned away, some masking smirks with coughs or shuffled feet. The man, unbroken, offered no retort. With a quiet strength, he stepped back, the cold biting deeper, a folded flag clutched to his chest like a sacred oath, its edges worn but steadfast. Across the square, the sharp rhythm of boots cut through the murmurs. A high-ranking officer, his uniform ablaze with gleaming insignia, paused at the entrance, his presence a silent command. His voice rang out, steady and resolute. "Where's the man you just turned away? If you believe sacrifice deserves reverence, not dismissal, share valor in the comments." The words hung in the air, a challenge to the crowd's indifference, stirring whispers among those who lingered. On December 7th, the city shivered beneath a leaden sky as the sanctuary prepared its annual tribute to Pearl Harbor's fallen. For Elias Eli Thornton, 87, this day was no mere calendar mark. It was a portal to the battlefields of Korea and Vietnam, their weight carved into his weathered frame. He sought no accolades, only a fleeting moment among those who understood the cost of duty. His solitary walk to the sanctuary, flag in hand, was a vow to honor those who never returned, a gesture rooted in memory and loss. This narrative, woven through fragmented glimpses, binds the threads of time, revealing how one man's unyielding spirit can awaken a nation's conscience. Eli's journey began long before this moment, in the chaos of war where bonds were forged and broken, where survival hinged on grit and loyalty. His flag, a relic from a brother's casket, carried the weight of those left behind, a symbol of promises kept. The sanctuary, with its marble grandeur, stood as both a destination and a test, its doors guarded by rules that valued papers over lived experience. The gatekeeper's scorn was not new to Eli. He'd faced such slights in countless forms, skeptical glances, dismissive clerks, the quiet erasure of his service by a world that saw only age. Yet his resolve held, tempered by decades of resilience. As he stood in the plaza, the wind a relentless foe, he was unaware of the figure across the street, watching with intent, their phone already pressed to their ear, urgency in their hushed words. This moment, small in its unfolding, would ripple outward, challenging the city to confront its values and honor those it had overlooked. The officer's arrival marked a shift, his authority a counterpoint to the gatekeeper's apathy. His question, sharp and deliberate, pierced the crowd's complacency, forcing them to reckon with their silence. Eli, now seated on a bench, flag still in hand, was lost in memories of frostbitten nights, of comrades' laughter, of losses that never faded. He didn't yet know that his quiet dignity had sparked a reckoning, one that would carry his story beyond the plaza, into the heart of a nation grappling with its debt to those who served. This tale, told non-sequentially, mirrors the fractured nature of memory itself, where past and present blur, each moment informing the other. Eli's stand, though solitary, was never alone. It echoed the countless veterans whose sacrifices linger in the shadows, waiting for recognition. As the sanctuary's banners fluttered in the wind, proclaiming honor for the brave, Eli's presence challenged their meaning, demanding a deeper truth, that valor is not in appearances, but in the heart that endures. In the stillness before dawn, Elias Thornton rose, his modest apartment cloaked in quiet, save for the groan of an old oak chair. At 87, his movements were cautious, each step a negotiation with time, yet his will burned steady, forged in the crucible of distant wars. He slipped into a faded service coat, its seams whispering stories of forgotten battles. His boots, polished, with quiet care, caught the dim morning light, their shine a testament to pride unbroken. A bronze medal, won in a moment of raw courage, hung lightly against his chest, its weight more memory than metal. In his pocket, a folded flag, the one that had draped his brother's casket in Korea, rested, heavy with unspoken vows. His grandson, Caleb, offered a ride, but Eli waved him off with a gentle smile. "You've your own path to walk," he said, his voice soft but firm. This journey was his alone, a sacred rite of remembrance, a pilgrimage to honor those who remained in his heart. The path to the National Valor Sanctuary demanded endurance. 3 buses, each packed with mourning. Commuters, their stops timed with the precision of a soldier's watch. December's frost bit at his fragile skin as he stepped onto the sanctuary's plaza. The cold, a familiar adversary from long-ago campaigns. Marble pillars loomed above, their grandeur framed by banners that read, "Saluting Service, Open to the Courageous." Eli gripped the flag tighter, its folds a shield against the wind, and climbed the steps with deliberate effort, each one a small victory. Families buzzed with excitement in line, their voices bright. Young veterans, uniforms. Crisp flashed military IDs to the gatekeeper, a man whose bored gaze and mechanical gestures betrayed a lack of care. The scene was alive, yet it felt distant to Eli, a world apart from the weight he carried. When his moment came, Eli offered a weary smile, his eyes crinkling with the warmth of one who'd seen too much. Korea, 17th Division, and Vietnam. "Recon support," he said, his voice steady despite his years. The gatekeeper barely looked up, his attention fixed on protocol. "Military ID or veterans card, sir. No entry without them." Eli, with the calm of one long accustomed to such barriers, replied, "My card was lost years back, but I brought this." He drew out a worn photograph, its edges curling, showing a young Eli in fatigues beside his unit in a snow-dusted camp. Their faces alight with youth. The gatekeeper pushed it back with a scoff, his lip curling. "That's no good. Rules are clear." A woman in a sleek scarf nearby muttered, "Some old folks always try to claim glory." Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and careless. Eli held his silence, his dignity a quiet anchor as he descended the steps, the cold now harsher against his thin coat. The flag remained steady in his grip, a bulwark against the sting of apathy. He didn't see the figure across the street, watching intently, their phone pressed to their ear, urgency threading their hushed words. Eli sank onto a bench in the plaza, the next bus hours away, his breath visible in the frigid air. Memories surged. Gunfire in frozen valleys, the weight of a wounded comrade, the silence after a battle's end. These were his companions now, as vivid as the frost on his skin. The sanctuary's banners fluttered above, their promises of honor ringing hollow against the gatekeeper's dismissal. Yet Eli's resolve held, a quiet fire that had carried him through wars and years of being unseen. Unbeknownst to him, his presence had already set a spark, one that would soon ignite a reckoning beyond the plaza's cold stones. Inside the National Valor Sanctuary, the ceremony glowed with practiced reverence, a carefully staged tribute to sacrifice. Soft chandeliers cast a warm glow on the stage where curator Dr. Leonard Bryce spoke of bravery and loss, his words polished for the occasion. A youth choir's harmonies rose, their voices weaving through the marble hall, stirring hearts with patriotic fervor. Massive screens flickered with curated stories of young veterans, their courage shaped into neat vignettes, interspersed with grainy footage of old wars. "We gather to salute those who placed nation above self," Bryce proclaimed, his voice resonating, drawing applause from dignitaries, families, and reporters. The air was thick with pride, yet it felt detached, a performance at odds with the raw truth lingering outside. In the plaza, Eli Thornton sat on a frost-kissed bench, the folded flag cradled against his chest, its weight a steady comfort. Bitterness didn't touch him. Decades had taught him to expect this divide. Society lauded the idea of heroes, bold, youthful figures who fit neatly into tales of glory. but often turned away from those whose scars were hidden, whose hands shook with age. He thought of his brother, taken at 23, his laugh silenced in a Korean valley, and of comrades now reduced to names in his heart. The wind roared, a relentless foe, but Eli remained, lost in memories of icy marches and jungle ambushes, each one as sharp as the cold biting his skin. The irony was stark, a silent wound. Within the sanctuary, orators crafted veterans as icons of valor, their stories sanitized for inspiration, perfect for the civic narrative. Outside, Eli, his coat frayed, his frame bent by time, was cast as an intruder, unworthy of crossing the threshold. He'd known this slight before. In endless hospital queues, in strangers' glances that saw only an old man, not a warrior who'd faced hell. Disappointment no longer shocked him. It had hardened into a quiet resilience, anchored by an honor that refused to waver, even in the face of indifference. Across the city, in a stark office tower, Lieutenant Colonel Nora Bennett moved with purpose, down a gleaming corridor. A veteran of covert missions, she had no tolerance for unfairness, especially when it struck those who'd served. She rapped sharply on a mahogany door and stepped inside, her posture rigid with resolve. "General, there's trouble at the sanctuary," she said, her voice clipped. General Marcus Holt, 63, looked up from his desk, his 4-star insignia, catching the light, a symbol of authority earned through years of service. "Go on, Colonel," he said, his tone inviting but firm. Nora laid out the scene with precision. An elderly veteran, a survivor of 2 wars, turned away with contempt, his dignity trampled by inflexible rules and mocking whispers from the crowd. She placed a dossier on the desk, its pages detailing a life of service. 17th Division Korea, recon in Vietnam, bronze medal, Purple Heart, she said, her eyes meeting Holt's. He skimmed the file, his expression tightening as recognition dawned. "Elias Thornton, it's him?" he asked, his voice low. Nora nodded, her silence a confirmation. Holt snapped the folder shut, his decision made. "Clear my schedule," he ordered, rising from his chair. "I need my car now." The incident, small in its moment, was a spark in a tinderbox of overlooked sacrifices. Holt's reaction hinted at a deeper connection, a debt unpaid. As he prepared to act, the sanctuary's ceremony continued, its polished surface undisturbed, while outside, Eli's quiet presence challenged its core. The divide between the celebrated ideal and the ignored reality was about to be bridged, not by words, but by a stand that would echo far beyond the plaza's frost-covered stones. A convoy of black SUVs tore through the city, their lights pulsing silently against the gray morning. General Marcus Holt sat in the lead vehicle, his gaze fixed ahead, jaw set with purpose. Years earlier, Elias Thornton had saved Holt's father, a young officer, pulling him from a flaming wreck in Korea as bullets rained down. "Without him, I wouldn't be here," Holt had once said, his voice thick with gratitude. The convoy reached the National Valor Sanctuary, aligning before its towering steps. Visitors turned, startled, as Holt stepped out, his pristine uniform a stark contrast to the dull sky, his presence radiating authority. Inside, the ceremony pressed on, its rhythm unbroken, the gatekeeper still stationed at the entrance, scanning IDs with mechanical indifference. He froze as the echo of boots filled the hall, his face paling at the sight of a 4-star general striding toward him. "Where's the man you turned away?" Holt demanded, his voice a blade cutting through the air. The gatekeeper stammered, his confidence crumbling. "Sir, who?" "The veteran you dismissed," Holt pressed, his tone unrelenting. "Where is he?" The young man's voice cracked, guilt washing over him. "There was an old man. No ID." Holt leaned closer, his eyes blazing with controlled fury. "You told him he didn't belong, didn't you? That this place was for true warriors." His words echoed through the hall, silencing murmurs and drawing every eye. Dr. Leonard Bryce, alerted by the growing commotion, hurried to the entrance, his face a mask of forced calm. "General Holt, a privilege to have you. Is there some misunderstanding?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. Holt's response was sharp. "Misunderstanding? You stage a tribute to veterans, yet your staff casts out a decorated hero because he doesn't fit your image." A crowd gathered, phones raised, reporters sensing a story that would dominate headlines. Holt turned to them, his voice carrying the weight of truth. "You had a man who survived the horrors of Korea and Vietnam standing on these steps, and you sent him away like a vagrant." Bryce tried to interject, his tone defensive. "Our policies require identification." Holt cut him off, his voice rising. "Policies? You know what time does to military IDs? They fray, they tear, just like the bodies of the men who carried them through hell." He paused, his tone softening but heavy with gravitas. "Elias Thornton saved my father at Incheon, dragging him from a burning wreck as bullets flew. He holds a bronze medal, a Purple Heart, and you treated him like he was nothing." The hall fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. Lieutenant Colonel Nora Bennett approached, whispering briefly. Holt nodded, his resolve unshaken, and barked to an aide, "Find Mr. Thornton, immediately." The crowd stood frozen, some lowering their eyes, shame creeping into their silence. Holt faced Bryce once more, his voice steady and unyielding. "You've reduced honor to a checklist, a set of rules that values papers over people. That ends today." The words were a verdict, a call to rethink what it meant to honor service. The ceremony's polished facade cracked, its scripted reverence exposed as hollow against the raw truth of Eli's rejection. Outside, the plaza waited, its bench holding, a solitary figure whose quiet dignity had already begun to reshape the narrative. Holt's stand was not just for Eli, but for every veteran whose sacrifices had been overlooked. A demand that their worth be seen, not in documents, but in the lives they'd lived and the battles they'd fought. Eli Thornton sat on the plaza's frost-covered bench, the folded flag a steady anchor in his trembling hands. The December cold seeped through his threadbare coat, but he barely registered it, his mind adrift in a sea of memories. Snow-dusted. Ridges in Korea, dense jungles in Vietnam, the faces of comrades who never made it home. Each recollection was a weight, a tether to a past that shaped him, its echoes as vivid as the wind stinging his cheeks. He didn't hear the approaching footsteps until a young officer stood before him, snapping a crisp salute. "Mr. Thornton, General Holt requests your presence, sir," the officer said, his voice firm yet warm with respect. Eli's brow creased, confusion flickering, but he took the offered arm, rising with a slowness that belied his inner strength as they ascended the sanctuary's steps. Eli's eyes caught the sleek black SUVs lining the plaza, their lights casting faint glows against the gray morning. A crowd was forming, their murmurs hushed, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. At the top, a commanding figure waited, 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders, a beacon in the overcast light. General Marcus Holt stepped forward, his salute sharp and deliberate. "Sergeant Major Thornton, I'm Marcus Holt, son of Captain Daniel Holt, 17th Division Korea, 1952, he said, his tone rich with recognition and gratitude. Eli's weathered face softened, a spark of memory lighting his eyes. "Danny's boy? You've honored him well, son," he replied, his voice a quiet rumble, warm with familiarity. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with reverence, as if time itself paused to witness. One by one, soldiers in attendance raised their hands in salute, their movements precise, a collective acknowledgement of a legacy forged in fire. Civilians joined, some pressing hands to hearts, others bowing heads. In quiet respect, their earlier indifference replaced by awe. Eli straightened, his frail frame seeming to expand, No longer just an elder in a worn coat, but a warrior whose sacrifices were finally laid bare. "We've unfinished matters, Sergeant Major," Holt said, offering his arm with a steady, respectful gaze. A ceremony awaits its true guest of honor. They crossed the sanctuary's threshold, the gatekeeper stepping aside without a word. His earlier scorn dissolved into a chastened silence. Dr. Leonard Bryce approached, his face a mix of unease and deference, but Holt raised a hand, silencing any attempt at explanation. "Listen, don't speak," Holt said, his voice low but unyielding. "Learn from a man who's lived the meaning of sacrifice." Eli entered the grand hall, his eyes tracing the soaring ceilings and polished marble, absorbing the moment with a calm that spoke of years spent weathering storms. He leaned toward Holt, his voice barely audible. "This is more than I need, son." Holt met his gaze, resolute. "With all respect, sir, it's exactly what's owed." The audience, once scattered in idle chatter, now stood transfixed, their attention locked on the pair walking side by side. Eli moved with Holt, the flag a steadfast presence, its folds a testament to those he'd lost, his brother, his comrades, the countless names etched in his soul. He thought of the decades spent unseen, his service reduced to faded papers and skeptical glances, and now the unexpected weight of being recognized, not as an old man, but as a soldier whose life had shaped others. The ceremony, paused in its scripted grandeur, felt secondary. The true tribute unfolded in the reverent eyes that followed him, their silence a chorus of newfound respect. Eli's steps, though slow, carried the strength of a life defined by duty, a living reminder that honor endures, not in fanfare, but in the quiet courage of those who serve. Eli Thornton's story spread like a spark through dry grass, igniting change across the city and beyond. Videos of General Marcus Holt's fiery confrontation at the sanctuary flooded screens, shared and reshared, each view amplifying the call for respect and remembrance. Images of Eli crossing the sanctuary's threshold, flag in hand, became a symbol, their quiet power resonating in hearts far beyond the plaza. Newsrooms seized the narrative, crafting headlines that framed the incident as a turning point, a moment when a nation was forced to confront its failure to honor those who'd given the most. Dr. Leonard Bryce resigned days later, his departure, a quiet concession under the weight of public outcry. The gatekeeper, shaken by his role, issued a public apology, his words faltering but earnest, before being reassigned to a role away from the spotlight. The sanctuary acted swiftly, overhauling its policies to ensure no veteran would be turned away, documents or not. "Service earns a place, not paperwork," their statement declared, a vow to prioritize the spirit of sacrifice over bureaucratic hurdles. The change rippled outward, prompting other institutions to re-examine their own practices, each one a step toward a broader recognition of those who'd served. Eli, uneasy with the attention, brushed off reporters who sought his story. "I'm no different from thousands of others," he'd say, his voice steady but soft, deflecting praise. "They're just less seen." Yet his humility only deepened. The impact, his story, a catalyst for transformation. Veteran organizations saw an unprecedented surge in support. Donations flooded in, volunteers lined up, and partnerships formed to expand programs for healthcare, housing, and community reintegration. Classrooms across the city invited former soldiers to share their experiences, their tales of resilience and loss weaving threads of connection between generations. Elder care homes, long overlooked, welcomed a wave of visitors, their presence a quiet tribute to the unseen heroes within, each visit a small act of recognition inspired by Eli's story. The city itself seemed to shift, its people carrying the lesson forward in deliberate, everyday gestures. A nod to an elder on a bus, a door held open with a murmured, "Thank you." A conversation struck up with a stranger who might carry hidden scars. At the sanctuary's plaza, a simple wooden bench gained a bronze plaque. For those who served. It became a sacred symbol, a place no one dared occupy if a veteran was nearby, a gesture of respect that spread wordlessly through the community. On Sundays, Eli would appear, sometimes sharing stories of frostbitten marches or jungle patrols with curious children or attentive youths, other times sitting in silence, his presence a quiet anchor. He was no longer just an old man in a worn coat. He was a steward of legacies, a living testament that heroism isn't measured by outward grandeur, but by the enduring strength of a life devoted to duty. Beyond the tangible shifts, Eli's story fostered a deeper reckoning. It challenged the city to confront its tendency to celebrate heroism in abstract terms while overlooking the human cost borne by those like Eli. His quiet humility became a beacon, proving that even a single moment of recognition could ripple outward, reshaping how a community values its past. The flag he carried, a constant companion, stood as a bridge between eras, linking the sacrifices of yesterday to the responsibilities of tomorrow. Eli's legacy was not in the attention he shunned, but in the countless lives touched by his story, each one a testament to the enduring power of valor seen and honored. His presence, unassuming yet profound, urged all to recognize the service beating in every veteran's heart. A call to honor not just the idea of sacrifice, but the individuals who carried its weight through decades of quiet resilience. Elias Thornton's journey, from a spurned elder to a symbol of unshakable valor, resounded far beyond the marble walls of the National Valor Sanctuary. His story, sparked by a single act of injustice on a frost-bitten December morning, became a beacon, illuminating a society's flaw in praising the sheen of heroism while ignoring its weathered truth. General Marcus Holt's stand was more than a correction of one wrong. It was a summons for a nation to redefine its principles, to see honor not in pristine uniforms or preserved records, but in the choices made under fire, the quiet burdens carried through decades. The image of Eli, flag pressed to his chest as he walked beside Holt, became an enduring icon, shared across screens and etched in headlines, stirring a profound reckoning on memory, respect, and the debt owed to those who serve. The impact of that day stretched far beyond the moment, its ripples tangible and lasting. The plaza's bench, marked by a simple bronze plaque reading "For Those Who Served," transformed into a site of quiet pilgrimage, where visitors paused to reflect on the sacrifices that built the nation. The sanctuary's new policy, welcoming veterans on their word alone, set a standard that echoed through other institutions, prompting museums, memorials, and civic spaces to dismantle their own barriers. Veteran aid organizations flourished, buoyed by an outpouring of donations, volunteers, and partnerships that expanded programs for health, housing, and reintegration, ensuring that those who'd served were not left to fade into the margins. Schools. Across the city wove veterans' stories into their curricula, inviting former soldiers to share tales of resilience and loss, forging bridges between generations. These visits, sparked by Eli's story, ensured that the sacrifices of men like him would not be forgotten, their lessons carried forward by young minds eager to understand. Elder care homes saw a surge in visitors, their presence a quiet tribute to the unseen heroes within, each interaction a small but meaningful act of recognition. The city itself seemed to awaken, its people embracing a new awareness, offering seats to elders, striking up conversations with strangers, nodding respectfully to those who might carry hidden scars. These acts, small in isolation, wove a tapestry of change, a collective resolve to see courage in the quiet strength of those often overlooked. For Eli, the transformation was deeply personal, though he shunned the spotlight that followed him. He returned to the plaza's bench each Sunday, sometimes sharing stories of long-ago battles with wide-eyed children or curious youths, other times sitting in silence, the flag a constant companion. His presence, unassuming yet profound, emboldened other veterans to speak, to claim their place in the narrative of a nation they'd helped shape. The flag, a relic from his brother's casket, stood as a bridge between past and future, a reminder that service transcends time, linking yesterday's sacrifices to tomorrow's responsibilities. Eli's story challenged the nation to move beyond mere remembrance, urging an active commitment to honor veterans by seeing their humanity, their scars, their resilience, their quiet dignity. His legacy was not in the headlines or viral clips, but in the countless lives touched by his example, each one a testament to the power of recognition. The city, once quick to judge by appearances, learned to look deeper, to ask what battles an elder might have fought, what weight they carried in silence. Eli, with his steadfast humility, became a symbol of hope, proving that even the darkest moments of dismissal could birth a light that endures, guiding a nation toward a truer understanding of valor and the unbreakable spirit of those who serve.